It's time to look at the wide array of Space Wolf special characters and talk about which ones give us the most bang for our buck when in game. Hello and welcome back to Auspex Tactics, the strategy focused 40k channel, where we're all about getting the most out of our miniatures on the tabletop. Today, as one of the concluding videos for the Space Wolf series, I thought we'd take a look at all the special characters that we can use for the Space Wolves, have a quick run through the datasheet of each and discuss their real world utility when compared with the opportunity cost of taking a different one of them, or just comparing them to the more generic choices of the Wolflords or Wolfguard battle leaders and things. In the video, we'll take a look at the datasheet for every special character in the Space Wolf army list, and then bring them together in some sort of rough tier ranking list at the end, as to which I feel are the strongest. Plenty to cover today, so let's jump straight into it and start with Logan Grimnar, the Great Wolf himself. So there's two ways that you can field Logan, either on foot as you can see in this datasheet, or on Storm Rider, which we'll get onto in a second. On foot he'll cost you 140 points, he's very tough, gives excellent buffs, and is an absolute murderous combatant in the fight phase. He has a similar profile to a standard Wolflord in Terminator armour, but with one extra wound and attack, and he's armed with the Axe Morkai, which can be used either one-handed or two-handed, the one-handed version giving him +2 strength, AP -3 and damage D3, and two-handed giving him ×2 strength, AP -3 and damage 3. You subtract 1 from the hit roll while you're using it two-handed, meaning that it should be somewhat of a choice, but usually with Hunters Unleashed you will be hitting on 2s anyway, making two-handed the way to go, and it essentially gives him the same damage profile as a Thunderhammer. He's got the standard Angels of Death for Mighty 6 attacks on the charge, Combat Doctrines for extra attacks than the Assault one, and Bolter Discipline, which means he'll be putting out some pretty accurate Storm Bolter fire right at 24-inch range. He'll allow your friendly Space Wolves to reroll all failed hit rolls within 6 inches of him, so he has particularly good synergy with shooting buffs, and also melee things like Power Fists and Thunderhammers, which will typically still be hitting on 3s due to being -1. On top of this, he makes Wolfguard Nearby Fearless, has a 4+ invul save, and can be set up off the board via Teleport Strike. Generally no complaints about him from me. For 140 points is a pretty reasonable deal. I think he has the best synergy with things that are active both in the shooting and fight phase, particularly things with Thunderhammers or Power Fists, such as Wolfguard Terminators with Power Fists and Storm Bolters, or maybe some Primaris Aggressors. He's also not a terrible shout for your Warlord as well, having the Saga of Majesty, which is a pretty useful one because it makes that reroll all failed hits aura to be 9 inches rather than 6, so it's a significant portion of your battle line. If we move on to his variant in Storm Rider, obviously you'd have to choose between the two. Storm Rider has some positives and negatives. It has the profile of a vehicle, which means it's not quite as helpful for trying to get into ruins or things, and of course it can't deep strike. You're basically buying a very different beast here. It costs 15 points more, and he has 12 wounds rather than 7, and toughness 6 rather than 4. He also moves 10 inches rather than Logan Grimnar's standard 5. However, for this massive durability and speed increase, he's actually sort of less durable, as the enemy can directly shoot him rather than having to shoot the units in front of him due to the character protection. Basically, when on Storm Rider, I'd consider him much less of a buffing character and something more akin to a fast, incredibly fighty Dreadnought that just happens to also provide a buff around him, but is likely to get gunned down as a priority. Honestly, if you are going for a bit of a threat overload list, I don't think Storm Rider is a terrible option by any means. He may well not make it to the enemy lines, but your opponent will have to dedicate significant firepower to shutting him down, with 12 wounds, a 2+ armor save and a 4+ invul save. In addition, he also gets the extra attacks from his wolves and can reroll charges, both of which are pretty helpful. Moving on, we have Krom Dragongaze, who is what I would consider as a pretty decent option if you're just looking for a cheap Wolflord to fill an HQ choice and maybe buff some shooting or melee with the reroll 1s roll. As his standard Wolflord is 74 points anyway, Krom is really a steal of an upgrade, as he gets his Relic Blade Wormclaw for free. That will give him strength +2, AP -2 and damage D3. That in itself is usually going to be worth it compared with a bare bones Wolflord, and he also has the situational rule called the Fierce Eye, which means that enemy units within 3 inches of him subtract 1 from their leadership. Not much, but another small incentive. I'd say the main opportunity cost is weighing him up versus taking a Lord with a Power Fist, who's also very cheap and also more of a credible threat to vehicles. I think I'd typically be swayed to take the Power Fist myself, but I can see the advantage of saving a fair few points by taking Krom. Plus he does have a very fun, cool model. Next up we get to the two Thunderwolf mounted characters in Canis Wolfborn and Harald Deathwolf. Canis Wolfborn is a Wolfguard battle leader on a Thunderwolf, and he costs you 100 points, and is armed with a pair of wolf claws for the +1 strength, AP -2, and reroll wound rolls. Unfortunately, as a Wolfguard battle leader, he doesn't have any sort of invul save, which is a real handicap compared with taking, say, a standard battle leader on a Thunderwolf, where you'd be able to acquire yourself a Storm Shield. In addition to his standard Lieutenant style rerolls, he has the Born of Wolves ability, which has synergy with the actual wolf units in the Space Wolves list, giving you +1 attack for Fenrisian or Cyber Wolves, or the crushing teeth and claws of the Thunder Wolves. It's actually quite a meaty upgrade on the Fenrisian Wolves if you were trying to make some sort of wolf-related strategy work, as we saw in a previous video, and it certainly means that if you just want a character to buff Thunder Wolves, then Canis Wolfborn isn't the worst shout. In addition, he also has the Alpha Predator special rule, which means he himself can reroll failed charges. I think for general purposes I would be more tempted by a standard Wolfguard battle leader on Thunderwolf, or even using a jump pack or something, mainly because he can take a Thunderhammer and Storm Shield, and that's a significant boost to damage and durability. Canis is a bit cheaper though, to be fair, and he does have some fun special rules, so I don't think there's absolutely loads in it, but generally I like fighty characters to be able to punch through tanks pretty well as well, which Canis will struggle with a bit, having only damage 1 weapons. Harald Deathwolf is our Wolflord on a Thunderwolf character, and has a pretty mighty stat line with 7 wounds and 5 attacks. Harald is far more durable than Canis, with a 3+ invul save from his Storm Shield as well, and he's armed with Glacius, which is a bit more of an all-comers weapon, at strength +2, AP -2, and flat damage of 2. It also has the Hellfrost type special rule, meaning that if he injures something he has a small chance of dealing a further mortal wound. He also has a few extra special rules. First of all, he has Expert Hunter, allowing him to be deployed outflanking, much in the same way as the Cunning of the Wolf stratagem, so it's quite nice that you get it for free, though admittedly you could do similar with something like a Wolflord with a jump pack. His Lord of the Wolfkin special rule allows Thunderwolves, Fenrisian Wolves and Cyber Wolves to use his impressive leadership of 9, which can be good if you are thinking about using those units. And finally, his Mantle of the Troll King will allow him to add 1 to his saving throws that are made against shooting attacks, but unfortunately they have FAQ'd this away from being the 2+ invul save that it used to be. It now only works for his regular save, not invul saves. Realistically, that's not usually going to make much difference unless it's being targeted by AP 0 weapons, as anything with higher AP is going to catch onto his Storm Shield. If you were thinking about taking a Wolflord on a Thunderwolf anyway, then Herald really isn't a bad choice. I'd see the trade-off of taking a standard one with a Storm Shield and Power Fist. That one will cost you 115 points, with taking this guy who pays a bit of a premium, has the side grade of the Power Fist compared with Glacius, but gains Outflank, Lord of the Wolf King, and Mantle of the Troll King. Again, I'm afraid I would probably want to take the standard Wolflord myself if I was building a Space Wolf army list, unless I really had specific purposes for this guy, such as trying to make synergy with the Fenrisian Wolves. Next we come on to Arjac Rockfist, the Anvil of Fenris, and one of the strongest characters in the book in my opinion. This guy's a Wolfguard battle leader with a mighty stat line, 5 wounds, 4 attacks, and he is clad in Terminator armour for a 2+ save, and is protected by the Anvil shield that not only gives him a nice 3+ invul save, but it also subtracts damage that he takes by 1 to a minimum of 1, pretty solidly countering some of the easiest ways to remove him with multiple damage weapons. Point for point, he's a lot more durable than most of the other characters on this list. He's armed with Foe Hammer, which he can both use in melee and as a ranged attack, and he's also at strength 10 because he's base strength 5, because why not? Admittedly, it does only have a damage of D3 compared with the standard Thunderhammer damage of 3, unless you're fighting a character or a monster, in which case it does go up to flat 3. It means that he's not quite as efficient versus vehicles, he is a bit more the equivalent of being armed with a strength 10 Power Fist. But still, for 110 points on his profile, it's not all that bad at all. He gets his standard Wolfguard Battle Leader rerolls of wound rolls of 1 for Space Wolves nearby. He can teleport because he's a Terminator, which can really help get him right up and close to the fighting. But he's got another incredibly powerful buffing special rule, which is Champion of the Kingsguard, which not only allows him to reroll failed hit rolls when targeting a character, but more importantly allows you to get 1 additional attack in the fight phase for all friendly Wolfguard units within 6 inches. First of all, this includes him, so he'll be up to 6 attacks on the charge after Shock Assault, but say if you've got a nearby unit of Wolfguard Terminators, you could be having an extra 10 Thunderhammer attacks or something just for having him nearby, obviously depending on how much you've tricked out the squad. This rule combined with his rerolls and his own great stat line make him pretty much an auto-include character if you're wanting to buff a unit of Thunderwolves or Wolfguard Terminators. I really like Arjac, and I think he's one of the strongest HQs for Space Wolves in the army. Njal Stormcaller can be fielded either in Power Armour or in Terminator Armour for 10 points more. Either way, he has a 2+ save and 5+ invul save, but Terminator Armour also grants him an extra wound and the ability to deep strike, which could be useful depending on what you're trying to use him for. He's armed with the Staff of the Stormcaller, which is a pretty typical force stave, a bolt pistol, and Nightwing, who is his pet raven, who can attack people for d6 strength 3 attacks within 12 inches. Basically, Njal is your souped up rune priest. Like a rune priest, he can cast 2 psychic powers, although he can also attempt to deny 2 as well. And he knows 3 powers from the Tempestus discipline rather than 2. Furthermore, he can also add 1 to any psychic test that he casts, making him particularly more adept at casting that Warp Charge 8 Stormcalling spell, which allows Space Wolves nearby to be in cover. Just flatly more reliable all round, and particularly more reliable with that high Warp Charge spell. That Staff of the Stormcaller can also allow him to reroll 1 failed Deny the Witch test, so between that and the extra deny, he'll certainly be keeping your army very safe from enemy psychic manifestations. A standard Rune Priest is 88 points, so for 115 points for the stat line upgrade, extra spell, extra deny, and big bonuses to casting and denying, I think he can be very worth it, and is certainly a very strong alternative to a standard Rune Priest if you are looking to get the most out of the Space Wolves psychic phase. Next we have Ulrik the Slayer, who's in a bit of a weird spot rules-wise at the moment. He's 85 points, and is essentially a Space Wolves Wolf Priest, although as of yet, pending any FAQs, Saga of the Beast hasn't given him litanies, much like the other Wolf Priests got. Seeing as he is quite so cheap though, it might not be the worst thing in the world. He's 13 points more than a standard Wolf Priest, he gets 1 extra attack and 1 extra wound, gets a plasma pistol included into this cost, and he has his Slayer's Oath instead of litanies, where instead of any of the other abilities that you can take that only go off on a 3+, this one just stays on all the time, allowing for any Space Wolves within 6 inches to reroll all hits in the fight phase. If that's all you wanted the Wolf Priest for, then he will do this better. Furthermore, he has a couple of other slightly situational special rules. His Wolf Helm of Rust gives a 9-inch leadership aura buff rather than a 6-inch one that the standard Wolf Priest has, and if he kills either a character or monster in the fight phase, for the rest of the battle, you add 1 to the wound rolls of friendly Space Wolves within 6 inches of him, which is actually a really powerful buff, but of course killing the character or monster is kind of problematic, seeing as that's something that's not guaranteed to happen, as it's kind of dependent on him finding something that's weak enough for him to beat up. Still, for the stat line upgrade, Plasma Pistol, Wolf Helm and Slayer's Oath, I can see him being a pretty reasonable alternative to a 72-point Wolf Priest. You get a fair few minor upgrades for only a few more points. Obviously, the Wolf Priests work slightly differently as of Saga of the Beast. If you want litanies, then obviously you're going to be going for one of them. Next we come to all-new Primaris Ragnar Blackmane, who we've already mentioned a couple of times now. He's got a Primaris Wolflord stat line with 7 attacks and an extra 3 if he charges rather than shock assault. He rerolls charges and allows friendly Space Wolves to do the same nearby him, and he and friendly Space Wolves can consolidate 6 inches after fighting. He's got the standard Wolflord rerolls, and he's armed with Frost Fang for a strength 6 AP -4 2 damage attack that's going to do a number on virtually anything with that amount of attacks, and things like Touch of the Wild and Seekia Saga can have great effect when he is in combat, potentially getting him up to ludicrous numbers of attacks, where if you fight again he could literally be averaging well over 30 hits in one fight phase. His main weaknesses are that he's a little bit slow to try and deliver into battle, and can't take certain transport options being a Primaris Marine, and he's not quite as durable as some due to only having a 4+ invul save rather than a 3+ Storm Shield. In general though, he is just ludicrously fighty for his points cost and provides some important buffs, so is certainly one of the strongest characters in the Codex. Next we come to Lukas the Trickster, who is an elite slot who can't be your warlord, and he's only 80 points. He allows rerolling wound rolls of 1 for friendly blood claws, so it's sort of like a Wolfguard battle leader for them, but it is a touch annoying that it's a bit specific, and it means that he can't buff the other units in quite the same way. His 80 points buys you 4 wounds and 4 attacks, and is armed with a plasma pistol and the Claw of the Jackal Wolf, a strength 5 AP -2 2 damage weapon that has the helpful advantage of being able to reroll failed wound rolls, which means that he will be even wounding things like Imperial Knights more than half the time. Finally, he's got the Pelt of the Doppelganger, which makes him -1 to hit in melee. Not a bad little survivability buff, although he isn't all that hard to take out due to having no invul save. And he also has the Last Laugh, where he uses his stasis bomb that's in place of one of his hearts, where you can roll off against your opponent, and if you win, then you immediately cause d6 mortal wounds on whatever happened to kill him. I think Lukas is an interesting one. He's not really all that much good as a buffing character, but is fairly efficient as a low-cost melee brawler, who is pretty likely to deal a reasonable amount of damage, but is just incredibly easy to take out compared with virtually any Space Wolves melee character. That lack of invul save just really hurts him. I suspect that he usually gets passed up for other Wolfguard battle leaders most of the time, people who can take Power Fists and Storm Shields. Certainly you lose a few special rules, but essentially for the same points, you can have a very similar melee damage output whose rerolls buff everyone, not just Blood Claws, and is also a lot harder to take out. I thought we would quickly mention Murderfang and Bjorn as well, although we have looked at them in a bit more detail in the Dreadnoughts video. Naturally, as they're both less than 10 wound characters, they can't be targeted, which does mean that they can kind of compete at least in a countercharge sort of mechanism. Murderfang is an 125.8-inch move Dreadnought, with a whopping 5 attacks with its Murder Claws and 6 with Shock Assault, and you can also reroll failed wound rolls with it. It doesn't provide any buffs to the rest of your army, but point for point and durability wise, it's a pretty reasonable pick if you just want an incredibly fighty character. Bjorn on the other hand offers much more than this, and can cost you anything up to 204 points if you take him with a twin las cannon and heavy flamer. Armed with True Claw, he is far more dangerous in melee than Murderfang, as he has the same amount of attacks, and also rerolls 1s to hit and wound as well. Again, as both he and Murderfang are both Dreadnoughts, they can use things like Duty Eternal, making them pretty tough to take out with 8 wounds, and Bjorn also has a 5+ Feel No Pain type save, adding to his durability. He also provides the standard captain sort of rerolls from being last of the company of Russ, and he gives you a further command point to add to your stash if you take him in your army. Bjorn's certainly going to make himself a problem for the enemy in pretty much any game, as with Ballistic Skill 2+, he's going to be a decent shooting threat as he stomps up in the shooting phase, hopefully screened by other units before being able to make a powerful charge. Finally, I thought since we were talking about characters, we'd also take a look at the Wolflord and the Wolfguard Battle Leader, and talk a bit about where I'd rank them in this great big hierarchy. Standard Wolflords have a really decent amount of flexibility. They're 74 points at base, but can be upgraded very heavily if you want a melee threat, and something that can also buff your charging units. I'd say Storm Shields and Power Fists, or Storm Shields and Thunderhammers are going to be the strongest options on him, as that adds decently to his survivability for just 10 points, and also means that he can make the most of that incredibly hitty melee profile, and Hunter's Unleashed to keep him hitting on 2s with a powerful anti-tank weapon. As it's Space Marines, you can get an absolute ton of variants of Wolflords. Firstly, you can give him a jump pack, which I think is possibly the most competitive choice out of them. That gives him innate deep strike and very decent movement, which means that he's actually likely to make melee with the targets that he most needs to. The fly keyword never hurts as well, as it allows optimal positioning and also allows him to take down planes in the fight phase. You also have the option of the Primaris Wolflord, who has a more improved stat line but no Thunderhammer option, so if you're just going for a buffing character with a Power Fist, then he might be reasonable. You can take him on a Thunderwolf, which costs an extra 20 points, gives him toughness 5 and those Thunderwolf attacks, as well as 7 wounds and a 10-inch move. In terms of raw strength, there's certainly good advantages to take him on a Thunderwolf over a jump pack, and I think in most games the main reason that it wins out is the combination of being able to deep strike, losing the fly keyword, and losing the infantry keyword, which really hampers him a lot when trying to get through terrain. You can also take them in Terminator armor for a slightly more durable Wolflord for an extra 20 points, and it also gives them the option of Deep Strike, so it's certainly an interesting choice, or some of the specific Primaris power armor marks, such as the Gravis Lord or the Phobos Lord. Overall though, I think my default Lord would be the Jump Pack Thunderhammer Storm Shield one, or Jump Pack Storm Shield Power Fist if I was going a bit cheaper. It's a good choice for something like a Fighty Saga Warlord trait, and can take some decent relics as well, such as the Mighty Wolf and Stone, to give him and nearby other Space Wolves an extra attack in the fight phase. If you're considering a Wolflord to be a fighty character though, then you could certainly consider a Wolfguard Battle Leader as well. He doesn't have quite as many options as his Wolflord counterparts, but one of the most interesting loadouts for him is that he can take the Jump Pack, Storm Shield and either Thunderhammer or Power Fist combo, and get you a very similarly fighty character for 14 points less than the Lord. You basically trade out 14 points for 1 wound and 1 attack, and I think this allows you to consider him a lot more as a serious choice for a melee character compared with the other codexes, who are in particular hampered with this guy as he doesn't have an invul save, and in other codexes he can't take Storm Shields. It's a real advantage that the Space Wolves get. So basically if I had to put these guys into some sort of rough tier ranking then this would be roughly where I would rank them. Bear in mind that this is of course my own opinion, and if you feel that I've ranked anyone too low or too high, then please let me know why down in the comments below. In general, I feel my logic are that the tier 3 ones are choices where you could easily do it better with a more generic choice. Lukas the Trickster doesn't provide quite as good rerolls, and I feel like you'd often be better off with a standard Wolfguard Battle Leader with Storm Shield and Power Fist. Harald Deathwolf and Canis Wolfborn I just don't really feel offer quite enough over the standard Wolflord and Wolfguard Battle Leader mounted on Thunderwolves themselves. I feel their special rules are a little bit niche. Krom Dragongaze is okay, could be niche as a backfield buffing character, but even then I will be slightly tempted to fork out for a Power Fist just so they hit a bit harder if the enemy does get close, and I don't think that Ulrik the Slayer really offers all that much more than standard Wolflords when buffing combat units, and in general won't be quite as fighty, and of course he lacks the litanies that standard Wolf Priests have. In tier 2, these are the units that I think do offer something different to everything else, but maybe are a little bit marginal because of their points costs. Murderfang I'm a bit in two minds about. He is incredibly cheap and ridiculously fighty, but that is admittedly all he does. If you want to go Space Wolf psychic powers, then Njal Stormcaller is a good shout. I just say that you get a fairly good utility out of him for the amount of points that you put into him, and I think that you can certainly build strong Space Wolf lists without psychic powers should you want to. I'd say Logan Grimnar is pretty similar. He gives the Chapter Master style rerolls and combines that with an incredibly fighty profile, so you pretty much get out what you put in. And Bjorn the Fell Handed was one I was seriously debating putting in tier 1. He gives Captain style rerolls, 1 command point, and has all the power of an incredibly fighty dreadnought that can't be targeted by shooting attacks. The only downside in my eyes is his fairly pricey points cost, and I feel that at least in some games he might struggle to recoup that. I definitely could have been persuaded to put him in tier 1 though. As for my favourites, I think that you can't really go too wrong with the standard Wolflord and Wolfguard battle leader, particularly the variants with a Power Fist or Thunderhammer and a Storm Shield. You get great damage output for their points, those nice solid reliable rerolls, and you can also tailor them to have the equipment that you most need to fit in with your army, whether that's a jump pack or a Thunderwolf. Arjac Rockfists here in the top tier as well. I just think for 110 points compared with the rest, he really gives you just that bit more. +1 attacks to Wolfguard, plus Lieutenant rerolls, plus a very fighty character who's hard to kill, just makes him a great buy at 110 points. Finally, I think it's no surprise that Ragnar Blackmane makes the top as well. He's an absolute blender in close combat, whether you load him up with stratagems or you just send him in with his mere 10 attacks. Reroll charges and his movement phase is great, on top of captain rerolls. There's definitely going to be situations where you might be able to kill double the amount of points you've invested in him in one single fight phase. So I hope you've enjoyed our quick run through of Space Wolves characters. If there's any in-game tactics or strategies that you think could be used to get more out of these guys, then please let me know down in the comments. There's no denying that a lot of the skill in using Space Wolves comes around managing their incredibly powerful fighty characters. They really are what could be described as a hero hammer army. If you've enjoyed the video, then feel free to subscribe to Auspex Tactics for more Warhammer 40k strategy content. And if you have been enjoying the videos recently, I'd just like to mention the Auspex Tactics Patreon page. It is what allows me to focus all this time on making strategy videos, so if you are watching regularly then any support is much appreciated. As well as helping keep these videos coming, you also get to see some videos early, vote in polls to decide what sort of videos come next for the channel, and regular prize draws where I post out some miniatures to lucky Patreons. If any of that sounds good to you, or you'd like to help keep the videos coming, then the link is down in the description below. A big thank you to my current Patreons for helping keep the channel going. In any case, a massive thank you for listening, and I'll hope to see you guys next time.